Chapter 8 of the Madman and the Pirate. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Madman and the Pirate by R.M. Ballantyne. Chapter 8. Let us return now to our miserable and half-hearted pirate, far out upon the raging sea. It must not be supposed that the Pacific Ocean is always peaceful. No, there are days and nights when its winds howl, and its billows roar, and heave, and fume with all the violence and fury of any other terrestrial sea. One such night the pirate's bark was tossed like a cork on the Pacific's heaving bosom, while shrieking winds played, as it were, fiendishly with the fluttering shreds of sails which they had previously blown to ribbons. Richard Rosco stood beside the weather bulwarks, holding on to one of the mizzen backstays. His mate Redford assisted the man at the wheel. Upwards of 3 years of Rosco's rule had subdued Redford to the condition of a hypocritical and sly, but by no means a submissive, savage. One or two spurts at the commencement of their career had satisfied the mate, as well as the men, that the only way to overcome Rosco was to take his life; and as Redford had not sufficient courage, and the men no desire, to do that, they pursued their evil courses in comparative harmony. Nevertheless, the pirate captain knew well that the savage Redford was more acceptable to the pirates than himself, so he determined to carry out intentions which had been simmering in his brain for some time, and rid the pirate crew of his presence. "We will sight the island to morrow afternoon, sir, if this holds," said the mate. "I know it," answered Rosco. "There is no good anchorage around it," continued the mate. "So you have told me before," returned the captain; "but it matters not. We shall not anchor." "Not anchor?" repeated Redford in surprise. "I understood that we were to land there to ship sandalwood. The crew thought so too, and I am quite sure—" "Well, go on. What are you sure of?" "Oh, nothing. Only sure that Captain Rosco understands his own intentions best." Rosco made no reply, and nothing further passed between the inharmonious pair at the time. Next day the gale abated, and as Redford had predicted, Sugarloaf Island was sighted in the afternoon. Running close in under the shelter of the mountain, the barque was hove to and a boat lowered. "The crew will take the arms with them, I suppose, sir?" asked the mate. "Of course, though there will not be occasion for them, as there are no natives at this part of the island. I merely wish to ascend the hill to reconnoitre. You will go with me. Put your pistols in your belt and fetch my rifle. We may get some fresh meat among the hills." Breech-loading rifles had just come into fashion at that time, and the pirate captain had possessed himself of a double-barrelled one, with which he became wonderfully expert. This weapon was put into the boat with a large pouch full of cartridges. No comments were made in regard to this, the pirates having been accustomed to see their commander land in various places for a day's shooting, the result of which was usually an acceptable addition of fresh food to their larder. "Remain by the boat, lads, till we return," said Rosco, leaping out when the keel grated on the shore. "Come with me, Redford." The mate obeyed, following his commander towards the same ravine where, about 4 years before, they had seen poor Zeppa disappear among the recesses of the mountain. Redford felt a little surprise, and more than a little discomfort, at the peculiar conduct of his captain, but he comforted himself with the thought that if he should attempt any violence, there was a brace of pistols in his belt and a cutlass at his side. He even for a moment meditated using the pistols when he looked at Rosco's broad back, but he knew that some of the men in the boat had a sort of sneaking fondness for their captain, and refrained, at least till he should get out of sight of the boat and into the shelter of the woods, where his actions could not be seen, and any account of the affair might be coloured to suit his convenience. Richard Rosco divined pretty well what was passing in his mate's mind. He also knew that as long as they were in sight of the boat His enemy would not dare injure him. He therefore threw his rifle carelessly over his shoulder, and walked with the most easy air of nonchalance over the strip of level land that lay between the sea and the forest that fringed the mountain base. On the instant of entering the mouth of the ravine, however, he wheeled suddenly round and said, "Now, Redford, you will lead the way, and I will direct you." The mate was startled, and his right hand moved, as if by involuntary impulse, towards the handle of a pistol. Instantly the muzzle of the captain's rifle was pointed at his breast. "Drop your hand," he said sternly. "Another such threat and I will shoot you with as much indifference as I would a sneaking dog. Now go on and do as I bid you." Redford gave in at once. He was at Rosco's mercy. Without a word he passed on in advance, and ascended the ravine with a quick, steady step. To say the truth, he knew well that while his commander on the one hand would not threaten what he did not mean to perform, on the other hand he would not shed human blood needlessly. He therefore felt less troubled than might have been expected. They soon reached a small eminence or rocky plateau, from which was obtained a splendid view of the sea, with the bark floating like a large albatross on its surface. From that point the boat could also be clearly seen, and every step of the path by which they had reached the eminence. "Now, Redford," said Rosco, throwing his rifle into the hollow of his left arm, so as to bring the muzzle full on the mate's chest, while with the forefinger of his right hand he lightly touched the triggers, "draw your pistols from your belt, and be very careful how you do it, very careful, for if, even by chance, you touch your hammer or trigger, you are a dead man." There was something of banter in Rosco's manner, yet this was associated with an air and tone of such calm decision that the mate felt curiously uncomfortable. He obeyed orders, however, promptly, and stood with a pistol in each hand. It must have been a tantalizing position, for had they been cocked he could have blown out Rosco's brains in a moment. Indeed, he was sorely tempted to break the half-cock catch on the chance of one or both going off, but his commander's eye and muzzle forbade it. "Drop them," said Rosco suddenly. If they had been red-hot irons, the mate could scarcely have let them go more quickly. It almost seemed as if his guilty desire had passed into the weapons and intensified the laws of gravitation. They came to the rock with such a clatter. "That will do. Now 2 paces step back march. Splendid! Why, Redford, I had no idea you was so well up in your drill," said Rosco, stepping to the spot beside the pistols, which the mate had just vacated. "You are fit to act fugleman to the British army. Now clasp your hands behind your back, and don't unclasp them till I give you leave. It is a new piece of drill, but not difficult to learn." The cowed pirate was too much alarmed to be amused by this last sally. He stood sulkily, it is true, but anxiously awaiting further orders. "Look here, Redford," continued the pirate captain, "I want to prove to you that the distance from this spot to the boat is about 500 yards. You see that gull on the water? It is about the same distance off as the boat. Well?" He sighted his rifle for 500 yards, took a rapid aim, fired, and the gull, leaping its own height out of the water, fell back dead. "Oh, don't start, my fine fellow! You forgot the other barrel." The reminder was in time to check an unwise impulse on the mate's part. "Now," continued Rosco, assuming a more serious tone, "I have brought you here for a last conversation. You have long desired to command that vessel, and I have long desired to resign the command. We shall both have our desires gratified this day. I intend to take up my abode here. You are free to go where you please, but not to come here again. Lay my words to heart now, and let me advise you to impress them on your crew. If you ever venture to come to this island again, I promise you to shoot every man that puts his foot upon the shore, and to shoot